For these simple knot headbands, you will need the most minimal of resources. I am using a scrap of needle cord to coordinate with an outfit that I've made. So this is a scrap of my dressmaking fabric. Equally, you could use cotton, polyester crepe or jersey. Cotton fabrics will react and behave the most easiest, and this needle cord gives it quite a nice stiffness to keep that knot in place. You will need scissors, a ruler and a fabric marker. I'm using a Prim Air erasable marker, but tailor's chalk or similar would do, and a cheap, inexpensive headband. I bought a pack of 5 from Poundland for 20p each, and roughly my fabric cost about 50p, so really cost effective and quick make. You will also need an ironing board and sewing machine. The first thing you'll need to do is iron your strip of fabric in half, right sides together, and then we're going to put a number of markings on the open edge, so not the folded side, the open edge, and this will allow for the band to slip in and also to create that knot. So I'm working in centimetres, and the first one is going to be 4 centimetres from the raw end, from the short end, and I'm going to leave that gap 1.5 centimetres, 15 millimetres. The second mark from the same end I want to do is 20 centimetres, and again I'm going to leave myself 1.5 centimetres. And the third and final marking is on the opposite end. Again I'm going to measure 20 centimetres from the short end, and again 1.5 centimetres. So I now have 3 sets of marks on my rectangle, one 4 centimetres away from the short end, one 20 centimetres away, and then another one 20 centimetres away from the short end. So I'm going to use a 1 centimetre seam allowance now, and I'm going to be sewing down this side. So I'm going to use a 1 centimetre seam allowance, and I'm going to be sewing towards my first mark, which I marked at 4 centimetres. So I'm going to start with 3 stitches forwards and then 3 into reverse to secure it. And I'm going to do that every time I get to a marker. I'm going to go back 3 stitches and forward 3 stitches. And then I just want to cut off and start again. Now that we have sewn the side seam, leaving gaps at our designated markers, we are going to press the headband. So we're going to press the seam that we've just sewn towards the crease, so that folded edge that we ironed a little while ago. So I'm just smoothing that out. There'll be a little bit more resistance with my fabric because it's needle cord, but if you've got something slippier like cotton or crepe, you should find that a little bit easier to lay flat. So make sure you're using the correct iron temperature for the fabric you have chosen. And I'm just pressing those seams open all the way down that strip. Now I'm going to do another set of markings and measurements with my fabric pen, and these are to create the tapered edges at the side of the headband. So I'm going to measure from the short end of my headband 6.5 centimetres, and I'm going to put a marker on each side of my folded strip. And then around about 1 centimetre from that centre seam, so you might like to mark that if you find that easier. I'm then going to draw a diagonal line from the side marker to the central seam marker with my pen to create a pointed shape. And then rather than using any seam allowance, I'm actually going to be sewing along the purple edge. So I want to do that at this side, and then I'm going to repeat at the other side. So now I'm going to be sewing the tapered ends of my headband, so the ones that I've just marked out with the air erasable pen. So this time, rather than using seam allowance, I'm going to sew directly on my purple lines, and again at the beginning and end of my line of stitching I'm going to use my reverse stitches to secure the sewing. So when your needle gets to that seam, you want to drop your needle, lift your presser foot and pivot it. So I'm going to reduce now this excess fabric, and I'm going to take it down to about 1 centimetre to half a centimetre. And then if you've got a particularly bulky fabric, you might want to reduce the tip of your point too, just to make sure it's smoother when you turn that out. And I'm going to repeat the same for my other side. So now you've got to this stage, we are nearly ready to finish your headband. So in some ways this is the trickiest part. So I've got needle cord, so as I'm turning it back on itself, it will resist a little bit because of the nap of the fabric. And I'm just going to tuck the end in. So I've got my 20 centimetre gaps and then my 4 centimetre gap at this side, and I want to work from the opposite side. So I've just kind of created a little pocket there to pop my knitting needle in, and I'm just going to slowly turn that tube back on itself. So try not to be too forceful, especially if you've got quite a pointy knitting needle or chopstick, so that you don't pierce the fabric. And I want to just peep the opposite end out of that hole. So that's the 4 centimetre hole. I'm just going to turn it back on itself and then turn this end here. Just encourage that to tuck back into itself, and then when I've got it almost in, I'm going to use my knitting needle just to point the ends. So now we've pressed that nice and flat, I've pressed the seams that we did to tape those edges onto the sides, and I'm going to locate my 4 centimetre hole, and this is where we're going to be starting to slip the headband in. So I'm going to do a simple knot, and when I pull it tighter, I want to make sure that both the seams are sitting on the same side, and this should make it easier when slipping the headband through. So I'm going to take the headband and pop it in through the 4 centimetre hole, and then I'm just going to push it along until I find my first 20 centimetre hole. And if you've got a busy fabric like mine, it can be sometimes quite hard to find where that is. I want to poke it out and then slip it through the knot. And then I want to find my second 20 centimetre hole to slip it back inside the fabric. I can just see it. And tie my knot a little bit tighter just while I fit my headband in. I can just see that hole there, and I'm going to carry on slipping that headband in until my headband disappears like that. And then this knot that I tied quite tight, I'm just going to loosen that a little bit to make it a little bit more sort of prominent when the wearer is wearing it, and just loosen it up. And it's just about kind of manipulating that fabric and styling it to look how you want, like that. So as you are wearing it, you want the seams to sit on the inside of the headband. Now it is entirely up to you. This little gap that's been left, you can slip stitch that closed, or what I like to do is leave it open. It won't affect it when you're wearing it, but my daughter wears a lot of these, and what tends to happen with small children is that when they fiddle with it, they can snap these bands, and if that does happen, you can simply just slide it back out and replace it with a fresh band.